evening, I'm Michael Usher and welcome to Spotlight. It's often said that nothing is certain in life except death and taxes. And doesn't the Federal Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, know that? Tonight, the father of three is opening up, admitting he had a drinking problem and revealing extraordinary details about the moment that changed his life forever. He also tells political editor Mark Riley that when it comes to the cost of living crisis, there's finally some good news.
The worst is behind us. What it has meant, there's more room in my life for the things that are more important to me. I've got a terrific relationship with the Prime Minister. You try and find the good in things, and maybe in a weird kind of way it was a bit of a blessing.
Treasurer, take one.
Have a seat, Ruth. I don't speak fluent Parliament, even though I've been here for a long time. Every time I need to explain to me how to introduce the ledge and all of that. So, yeah, I should have paid more attention.
A quick refresher on parliamentary process as Federal Treasurer Jim Chalmers starts his day.
Is there any trickery?
Total price is about $77.
The 46-year-old has been balancing our budgets and tackling taxation for more than 2 years.
7% higher than a week and a half ago.
Parliament House in Canberra is a very familiar place. He's been Labor's member for Rankin in Queensland since 2013.
So there's that.
And for years before that, an advisor.
So we were $70 10 days ago.
Yep.
This morning, his briefings cover the US market.
And then
dollar?
The dollar's at 67 cents.
And our biggest trading partner.
And then we have CPI for China on Sunday. That will probably just be weak again.
But it's the economic conditions outside this office that literally keeps him up at night. The cost of living crisis is the big issue for all Australians. When will we see the end of it?
Well, I think when it comes to inflation specifically, the worst is behind us. If you think about the fight against inflation, the worst is behind us. The peak in inflation is now in the rearview mirror. And we're not complacent about that. You know, we're cautious about that, but we are confident that having been through a very difficult time together, better days are ahead.
So that should mean that interest rates will come down before an election in May, if that's when it's to be. Is that your advice?
Oh, there's still really good reasons for treasurers of either political persuasion not to make predictions about interest rate movements. You know, the market expects that there will be interest rate cuts in 2025.
And some are saying December.
Yes, some are. But what we try and do, or what the Treasury tries to do, is to take the best summary, the best analysis of that, those market expectations and apply them to our forecast. But as Treasurer, I've been very careful not to make those kinds of predictions.
How close did we come to recession?
Well, if you look at the first 2 quarters of this year, we came quite close. Growth was very, very flat in March and in June. And if I'm honest with you, Mark, you know, there were times where we feared that the economy would go backwards. But if you're asking me, was I worried at the time? Too right I was.
Well, at what point were you really worried?
Well, you get close to these big release of these big numbers. You know, the national accounts in my line of work is a really important day, and you get close to it and you realise that the different parts of the national accounts, some of them you get a bit of a sense of in the lead up to. You know, there were some moments in the lead up to the release of that data where there was a very substantial risk that the economy might have gone backwards. A lot of relief when we discovered that it hadn't.
In his journey to Treasurer, he worked under Queensland Premier Peter Beattie, Labor leader Kim Beazley and Treasurer Wayne Swan. It was an era in which many inside the Canberra bubble, including Jim Chalmers, worked hard and played harder.
I was a pretty enthusiastic drinker in the you know, decades before that. Yeah. And so for me, it was just time to give it away, and I'm really pleased I did.
He's been sober for 4 years this month, a skin cancer scare his catalyst for kicking the booze. Complications after the minor operation in 2020 made him very unwell, visibly so.
You know, actually, as it turns out, I gave a press conference in this room. It must have been the opposition room, actually, the opposition party room. And I remembered Laura saying to me, you know, you look really unwell. You know, my face was kind of white. It was actually a kind of a weird shade of grey. And I was really unwell. And so people say to me, how did you do the first few months of giving it away? And one of the reasons, if I'm honest, is I was really unwell. I didn't feel like drinking over the summer that year. And so by the time I came good after the minor operation that didn't go well with the skin cancer I had on my chest, by the time I came out of that, I decided to basically give it up for the long term.
And so in a way, that was a good thing that you had that kind of little health scare. What if you hadn't? Would you still be drinking?
I'm not sure is the answer to that. I don't know. You try and find the good in things, and maybe in a weird kind of way it was a bit of a blessing.
Yeah. Well, I think it was a big blessing, wasn't it? Because it broke that cycle. We're talking about the hard working and hard living sort of cycle of politics, which you and I have observed in different ways over years. Can you give us an idea of what that looked like for you, being in the middle of that?
Oh, not really. I mean, I've always had trouble pacing myself, and what it has meant giving it away is there's more room in my life for the things that are more important to me. My kids and my family. My work is really important to me, and all of us are trying to strike the most effective balance between our work life and our home life. Some of us are not great at that, and so trying to get better at that, making room for things in your life that mean the most to you.
That decision means you're leaving the booze behind. Are you leaving other things behind? Were there any regrets about that time?
Oh, no. I mean, you learn from, I wasn't healthy enough. You learn from that. You can always be healthier. You can always strike a more effective balance, and I feel like I am now.
The balance now tips in favour of wife Laura Anderson, a journalist and former advisor to Julia Gillard, and their 3 children.
Also, Leo did that emu for me.
That's excellent.
People ask me about that as well.
That is excellent. Wow, I mean, there's a little bit of Aussie ostrich about it, but it's pretty...
Go on, Brad.
Yeah, it's good. His sobriety has also given him a new, unexpected role. Personal counsellor.
People make contact with me all the time. People I know and people I don't know. And they ask me questions about it. How did you go about it? And I quite like having a chat with people if they want to, but I don't go out of my way to do it.
You're not proselytise
no,
if someone comes looking for it. So what do you tell them?
Yeah. Well, mostly people want to say, was it easy? And I don't, I'm up front with them and I say, no, it can be hard. On a particularly hot day, if you've mowed the lawn or your team's playing in the grand final. Probably the time I most wanted to have a tin was last year. The Broncos made the grand final and I was at the semi-final at Suncorp at Lang Park. And the Broncos organisation were kind enough to get me down to the rooms afterwards. So I'm down there and the boys are singing the song and everyone's, place is going absolutely berserk. And one of my childhood heroes is Alfie Langer, a great Queensland Australian and Broncos halfback. And through the kind of the mayhem emerges Alfie Langer, and he's got 2 tins of gold, one for me and one for him, and he gives me one. And I didn't drink it, but I tell you, that's the closest I've come.
Temptation doesn't come greater, right?
Right.
So what did you do? Just put it down or say, thanks, Alfie?
I said, thanks, Alfie, I'm off it.
Hush it for a while, not
I'm off it. And,
that shows great strength. That does show great strength. Jim Chalmers grew up here, Logan, in Brisbane South. In his local barbershop run by mate Nicky, constituents feel comfortable speaking freely about more than just politics.
I also like the blunt feedback I get from the community, good and bad. you know, that's terrific. Last week I had 3 people telling me I was getting too fat, for example. So they give you wonderful feedback, and feedback is a gift. But I genuinely appreciate it because I want them to know that I'm not, you know, in terms of this community, I don't want them to see me as the treasurer who happens to be their local member. I want them to see me as their local member who happens to be the treasurer. What's that?
He's in the middle.
Come, Mark. This is Mark. This is Mark from Channel 7.
Nice to meet you. How you doing?
Yeah.
Nice to meet you. But many people around here would like Jim Chalmers to be their local member, who happens to be Prime Minister.
Thanks for having us. Yeah. Yeah, you too. Gotcha. I've got a terrific relationship with the Prime Minister. You know, there are relatively frequently the first person I hear from in the day was the Prime Minister. He knows I'm an early riser. You know, frequently I'll hear from him before I'll talk to anyone else. I'll talk to the PM. And we don't just talk about work. You know, we talk about a whole range of things, footy, family, things that, you know, mates talk about in Australia. And so we've got a great relationship. But more importantly than our friendship is our working relationship.
In what circumstances would you seek the leadership?
I can't see any circumstances, frankly. You know, my goal here is to be a good treasurer in a great Labor government which is led by Anthony from start to finish. You know, that's my objective. And when I reflect on that, or occasionally when I'm asked about that by people like yourself, you know, I'm quite proud of the decision that I took in 2019 to support Anthony for the leadership. I think that decision has been vindicated.
Your hat was in the ring there for a while, though.
Oh, briefly.
Yeah, I'm not asking you whether you'd mount a challenge against him, but, you know, you did have a crack for a while there in that leadership challenge, and surely that shows an intention to do that at some point in the future. The Labor Party has a process. After every election loss, the leadership is thrown open. Anthony Albanese ran 3 times in those processes, so you're not closing off that possibility in the future.
Oh, I just can't see it happening. You know, I can't see it happening.
You're never
going
to lose.
Well, I can't see us being in that position. I know that there's always an element, you know, I can see in your face an element of scepticism about that. But when you look around, well, in every organisation, a newsroom, an organisation, a business, you work out who is best placed to lead the team, and it's Anthony.
You're a lot younger than him. He's not going to be around forever. He accepts that. You know, we talked about you not knowing whether you're here for the long game or not, but if you are, that obviously would be a possibility and a reality for you, that there'll be a time where you can have a crack at the leadership.
I can't really see the circumstances where that would be the case.
Okay. Why do you think politicians can't speak frankly about ambition?
I think we can. I think we can. And you're asking me these questions now. You know, what I've tried to...
And I'll clip them up and I'll put them in the library and I'll pull them out in a few years' time.
Yeah.
The Prime Minister has just secured a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom Central Coast mansion. The price, $4.3 million.
You haven't bought a beach house recently, have you?
I have not, no.
Did you advise the Prime Minister against buying a house at Copacabana?
No, and I don't really see that as my role. You know, and I know this is an area that people are interested in. I know for Prime Ministers, you know, even personal decisions they make about how they arrange their home life, I know that that's of interest to people. I don't pretend otherwise.
The timing is the issue. I think everyone says, yes, the Prime Minister's within his rights to buy a house whenever he wants, wherever he wants, but there are political complications with the timing when you go into an election, particularly where housing is a big issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think he would acknowledge, as I acknowledge, that anything you do as Prime Minister is at great risk of being a subject of political conjecture.
With an election now only 6 or 7 months away, Jim Chalmers faces an enormous challenge.
We'll start at the back with Katina.
To frame a 4th budget that gives the Albanese government its best chance of re-election and secures his own future as Treasurer. The pressure is massive, but Jim Chalmers knows that is all part of the game of politics. How long are you in the game for?
I don't know is the honest answer. you know, nobody's in it forever, and, you know, these opportunities to be treasurer or a local member, you know, they're not typically someone's whole career, and so I try to make the most of it. And I'm not sure, you know, when I will have had enough, or people will have had enough of me. You know, part of it's out of my hands.
Yep.
Big part of it's out of my hands. And so I'll work that out at some future point.